The Invisible Man is written and directed by Lee Winnell and stars Elizabeth Moss as this woman called Cecilia, who one day decides to leave her abusive boyfriend for obvious reasons. But when he decides to kill himself and give all of his fortune to her, things start to go a little bit south when she thinks she is being stalked by her ex, who may or may not have found out a way to become invisible. When I heard that this movie was finally being made, my first initial thought was, oh great, they're going to just bastardize another classic Universal monster like they've done with Frankenstein and The Mummy over the last few years with The Dark Universe. And I was just like, what's the point? If The Dark Universe has already failed, why the fuck are you even trying with a property like The Invisible Man? And then the first trailer came out, and my worries just increased because that trailer was awful. And I really had no intention of seeing this movie after watching that first trailer, because I was like, this just looks awful. This just looks so bad. But then I found out who was behind this movie, who was directing it. And the fact that it was Lee Winnell had me intrigued because of the work he'd done with Saw and Insidious, and especially the work he did with Upgrade the other year, impressed me so much that I was thinking, okay, I'm a little bit intrigued now. Probably still not going to see it, but I am intrigued. And then the movie came out, and everyone was saying it was really good. So I thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to give this movie a go and see if it is good, if it is as good as people are saying it is, or whether it is just as shit as I thought it would be from that first trailer. I've got to say, Lee Winnell has surprised the fuck out of me because he's made this movie way better than it has any right to be. I had no doubt that the guy could make a good film. I mean, just look at Upgrade. But yeah, this movie is way better than it really should be. And all of the props go to Lee Winnell, who has completely reinvented this classic Universal monster for a modern age in a way that doesn't feel tacky or forced, but a way that feels very natural, and also in a way that feels there for the story, but not for the sake of, oh, let's just update this character. It feels like it's updated with a purpose. My favourite thing about this movie, without a doubt, is Lee Winnell's direction, and especially the camera work. There are some camera moves in this movie that are so simple and effective that I'm surprised no one has really tried these ideas before. There's a lot of suspense and tension throughout this movie that specifically comes from the art of suggestion and whether you think something is there or not. There's multiple times throughout this movie where Cecilia will just be doing something in the corner of a room and then the camera will just pan to an empty doorway or an empty chair or an empty hallway. But you don't know whether anything is there or not, and it's a cheap and effective way to do it, because technically nothing is there, but because you think something is there, the thought of something being there is more terrifying than you actually knowing whether it's there or not. And I love that about this movie. And it's not just those really tense moments that I loved in this movie as well. There's one scene in particular, I won't spoil it, but it basically takes place in a hallway, and Lee Winnell utilises very similar camera work to what he used in Upgrade. And I didn't find it terrifying, I just found it really fucking cool. And to have those kind of things incorporated in a movie that is already this taut with suspense and tension, I really did appreciate. There are some, stereotypical modern horror movie jump scares in the movie, but none of them feel false. They all feel very warranted, and again, you feel whatever Cecilia feels, so if she gets something scares the shit out of her, it's gonna scare the shit out of you. There's not just a false jump scare off in the corner that takes you off guard. I also really loved the script for this movie as well, though it does have a few plot holes here and there. For the most part, I really liked how it kept one-upping itself every act. just when you think the movie could wrap up, or just when you think things are going to be slightly better, Winnell finds a way to keep the story interesting and keep such a simple idea going for as long as it does, whilst also keeping it fresh and unique and inventive. I really like the ways in which the story kept changing things up, and I absolutely love that. But by far one of the best aspects of this movie is Elizabeth Moss as Cecilia. She brings a lot to her character, and you really do feel for her by the end of the movie. You can tell she's been through a lot of trauma, and that she really wants to get out of this situation, and that the paranoia is really starting to get to her. And again, her performance combined with Lee Winnell's camera work just makes for this unprecedented sense of paranoia that just builds and builds and builds throughout the whole movie. And I really did like what those two brought to the table and what it offered in terms of an overall experience in the movie. Elizabeth Moss was absolutely brilliant, and they do play a lot with the whole fact that she thinks she's being stalked by an invisible person, so whenever she does tell someone, she kind of seems a bit nuts to everyone. And they do play with that whole aspect quite heavily as the movie goes on, and again, I really did like that aspect. In most other movies, I do kind of cringe whenever I see that storyline. Someone's trying to explain something, no one believes them, and they just are deemed as crazy. But in this movie, it works. It legitimately works because it's an invisible person. No one's going to believe that. And I really liked what they did with that aspect in this movie, and again, found ways to keep it fresh and interesting as the movie went on. I genuinely don't know what else to say about this movie. Outside of a few plot holes that do kind of break the movie the more you think about them, outside of that, this movie is really, really well executed on almost every level. And what could have been a cash grab of a movie that fucks up a property like this, it instead goes for a very inventive and creative way of bringing a property like this to the modern day. And I'm going to give The Invisible Man an 8 out of 10. This is legitimately the first really good movie I've seen so far this year. Everything else has been either okay or just downright crap. But this is really the first good movie I've seen in 2020. Yeah, if you're a fan of Lee Winnell's, or you are just ever so slightly intrigued by this movie, just go and see it. Or I would just recommend just go and see it anyway. Even if you had no intention of seeing it, go and see it, because it will take what you think you're going in for and just completely smash your expectations, and it does something completely different. So guys, that was my review of The Invisible Man. If you've seen the movie, I really want to know what your thoughts about it are in the comments below. If you like the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Bye.